Hello and welcome. In this video, we'll have a look at really big mountains around the world. 4 pairs of distances between mountains. And they are ordered, these pairs, by the ratio between the meter and the yard, the meter-yard ratio. So here we have all the pairs. We'll move here from North America and the Pacific Ocean, all the way down to South America, the Atlantic, and we'll finally end up even in Antarctica. So we'll cover a lot of ground here, but we'll take them one pair at a time. So the first pair are these two distances. If I zoom in a little bit. Here we have a distance from Mount Denali, the highest mountain in North America, to Mauna Kea, the highest mountain in the Pacific Ocean. Think of that distance as 1 meter. 1 meter. Compared to the second one, which is from the second highest mountain in North America, Mount Logan there, to the second highest mountain in the world and in Asia, and that's K2 right here. That distance is as 2 yards. So the ratio between these two is 1 meter here and 2 yards in this longer distance. So that's the first pair. I'll go through all the 4 pairs like this and then I'll measure them after that. And then the second pair will stay in North America with this one. Just straighten it up a little bit. And here we have again Mount Logan involved, but these two distances are measured from Mount Whitney down here, the highest mountain in the lower 48 states. And the distance north here is to exactly Mount Logan, here. And the distance to the south is to Mount Logan is the second highest in North America and Canada's number 1. And the distance from Whitney to the south is to Pico de Orizaba, North America's third highest mountain, its highest volcano, and Mexico's highest mountain. And here we have it exactly that Mount Whitney to Mount Logan is as 1 meter, this longer distance, and Mount Whitney to Pico de Orizaba is as 1 yard, the shorter one here. So that's the second pair. Let's go to the third of 4 pairs. And now we step out into the Atlantic Ocean, and the highest mountain of all in the Atlantic is on the island of Tenerife here, and that's the volcanic peak of Mount Teide. Mount Teide. And it has 2 distances, and the first here, the longer one, is to South America, and that is as 1 meter. And it is to the highest mountain in South America, and in the southern hemisphere of Earth, and that's Mount Aconcagua. So Teide to Aconcagua is as 1 meter, while Mount Teide to this mountain in southern Africa. The highest mountain in southern Africa, south of Kilimanjaro, is Tabana Ntlenyana in Lesotho here. And Mount Teide to Ntlenyana is as 1 yard, compared to the previous distance, to Aconcagua, which is as 1 meter. And that now we come to the fourth and final pair. And again, it's Mount Teide we're measuring from. Here, in that distance. Mount Teide there to this mountain, this long line, is to a mountain in the Indian Ocean. And that is actually the highest mountain in the Indian Ocean. Mount Teide is the highest in the Atlantic. And this is Piton de Neige on the island of Réunion here, I think it's called. So Piton de Neige is the Indian Ocean's number 1 mountain. Now think of that distance, Teide to Piton de Neige, as 1 yard. And then we have the second distance here, which is as 1 meter. And that is from the highest mountain in Africa, Mount Kilimanjaro, to the highest mountain in Antarctica, Mount Vinson, right down here. This distance is as 1 meter compared to the previous one. So 1 yard here and 1 meter here. So that was the 4 pairs. Let's start to measure them now. And we'll begin with Mount Denali to Mauna Kea and Mount Logan to K2. So first we fly to Denali and measure to Mauna Kea in kilometers or meters. Here we are at the peak of Mount Denali. In a second or two it has cleared up. Right around here. And we'll fly to Mauna Kea from there. Give me a second here. Now we fly. And the thing is that the distance we're looking for here is about exactly 1 kilometer beyond the peak. We're looking for the distance of 4816.4. 48164 here. So we find ourselves just about a kilometer beyond the peak. 4816400. If we double that, we get 9632,800. 9632,800. And that's what we're going to find in yards now in the second distance between Mount Logan and K2. So let's fly to Mount Logan first and measure to K2. And we're looking for a distance of 9632,800 yards here. So we had to allow for a distance that was about a kilometer longer in the distance between Denali and Kea there, but that's a very small discrepancy on the larger scale here. So Logan to K2, and we're looking for a distance in yards here of around 9632,800 and a little bit shorter. And you can see it in the middle row here in the measure tool. 9632,700 thereabouts. And we also had to make a shift between map length and ground length here, which is quite common. So that was the first pair, where we had the ratio of 2 yards and 1 meter between these two distances. 1 meter and 2 yards. Let's turn to the second pair now. And that is here in North America. I'll just turn this around also. And the distances from Mount Whitney to Mount Logan and Pico de Orizaba. So we'll fly to Mount Whitney and measure to Mount Logan first in meters. Here we are at the peak of Mount Whitney and off to Mount Logan. And here we can look at the top row here, the map length. And here we have a distance of around 3093,400 and a little bit lower. 3093,400. And that's then what we should find in yards from Mount Whitney to Pico de Orizaba. So let's measure. So just under 3093,400 we should find in yards here. And that's what we do also, if you look in the measure tool there in the top row here. 3093 and just under 400 there in yards. So that was that pair. Let's take them away and zoom out and look at the third pair, where we will measure from Mount Teide then to Mount Aconcagua and Tabana and Tlenyana, these two distances, and first in meters from Mount Teide to Mount Aconcagua. And here we are at the peak of Mount Teide, and I'll attach the line here in just a second, right there, to Aconcagua. And here we have the peak of Mount Aconcagua. And if you look in the measure tool there, we find in the middle row, the ground length distance, 879800, just around 879800 meters. And if we now shift to yards, that's what we should find to Tabana and Tlenyana from Mount Teide. So let's fly to that mountain in southern Africa. 87980, just around there. Here we have it. Tabana and Tlenyana is here. And if you look in the measure tool now, we have, if we take the average value of these two distances, the average of those two, we get very close to 8798000 yards. Alternatively, we can have it that we shorten this distance to around here, and then we have it in the ground length distance. So it's very, very close, and we can use any of these or take the average of the two. And then we have it 8798000 yards. And if you zoom out, that discrepancy is very, very tiny. So here we had it that we had 1 meter here from Mount Teide to Aconcagua and 1 yard here from Mount Teide to Tabana and Tlenyana, southern Africa's highest mountain. That was a third of 4. Let's turn to the final pair of distances. And again, it's Mount Teide. And now we fly to this mountain, Piton de Neige, and measure in yards first. And then we measure from Kilimanjaro to Mount Vinson in meters. So back to Mount Teide first. And in yards, we'll measure to Piton de Neige, the Indian Ocean's highest mountain, from the Atlantic Ocean's highest. And here we find the distance. If we look in the top row here, the map length distance, 10366,200, 10366,200 in yards, 10366,200. And now we'll fly to Mount Kilimanjaro and measure to Mount Vinson in meters, where we should find close to the same numbers then. So from Africa's highest mountain to Antarctica's highest mountain now, Mount Vinson. 10366 and a little bit more in meters we should find. And here we have it in the middle row this time, the ground length distance. So we had to make a shift between map and ground length here. 10,366 and 700 we have here in meters. It should have been this long, then we had the same numbers coming up. So a little bit longer, and also a shift between map and ground length distance, which I've seen happen fairly commonly, and then you find the correct distance. But even if you didn't do that, it's not much of a discrepancy. So then that was the last pair, where we had 1 meter and 1 yard ratio ordering the distances. 1 yard here and 1 meter in this distance. Very, very near exactly. And these are just the highest mountains. At the Atlantic Ocean's number 1 to the Indian Ocean's number 1, 1 yard. And the Africa's number 1 to Antarctica's number 1, 1 meter. So that's what I wanted to show in this video. How this ratio between the meter and the yard, when you compare them in pairs of distances like this, ordered all these pairs of distances between really high mountains around the world. And this was a sample. There are more examples of this all around the world, how that ratio, the meter yard, orders mountains. And as in all my videos on this channel where I measure distances in Google Earth, it's always the unit of measurement ratios. And there are others between these. The very units we use today to measure distance. These ratios orders the surface topography of Earth, and it orders also how ancient sites like Giza and others relates to mountains, which I've shown in separate videos. And these ratios also order how cathedrals in Europe relate to one another, and also government buildings in North America, when you compare distances between them. But that was it for this video of high mountains around the world ordered by the meter-yard ratio. And if you watched this far, I thank you very much for your attention. And well, that's it.